All right, everybody, welcome back. College football week 3 already here. Hopefully everyone had a good week last week. I know I did. Playing the Miami offense against Texas A&M, saved my butt, made my weekend, profited about 5 or 6x. Hopefully some of you took some of the information away from last week, was able to kind of hop on that train with me. Felt like the rest of my teams were pretty solid overall. It was a really weird week with all the rain delays and just lightning in the area almost on like every single game. It felt like it was just an odd one, but hopefully we prevailed and you guys all had good weeks as well. Before we get started here, heading into week 3, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out a ton. Like this video if you can. And then if you have any disagreements or any players that you agree with, let me know in the comments or on X. Either of those is awesome. I love going back and forth with you guys. There were some plays I wasn't thinking of last week that I was able to jump on. And then there's some plays as well that maybe I was on that other people weren't. And it just gives me something to think about as well as you guys. So it's kind of a back and forth game as always. Let's go ahead and hit this slate real quick here on DraftKings. And then I'll get to some of my favorite plays for the slate. So we're talking about the early main slate here on DK. We have starting off Florida State and Boston College, where Florida State is a 25.5-point favorite, a 49.5 total, and Florida State has a 40 implied team total. Louisville and Indiana, where the Louisville is a 10-point favorite at 52.5 total. And this game has a little bit of interest for sure. Kansas State goes to Mizzou, where they are a 5.5-point favorite on the road, 48.5 total here with a 28 implied team total. LSU goes down to Mississippi State, where they're a 9.5-point favorite, 53.5 total there. Penn State goes to Illinois, where they're a 2-touchdown favorite on the road, 52.5 total there. Georgia Southern and Wisconsin, where there's a 63.5 total, 19.5-point favorite for Wisconsin and the Badgers at home. No line on this Weber State Utah game, rightfully so. That one's going to get pretty ugly in Salt Lake. Central Michigan plays Notre Dame, where Notre Dame is almost a 5-touchdown favorite at home with a 44.5 team total. Northwestern and Duke, where Dukies are a 18.5-point favorite, 48 total there. San Diego State goes to Oregon State, kind of gives them their hopeful, we'll see, first test of the year. Oregon State is a 24.5-point favorite at home. South Carolina, Georgia, the Cox are a 4-touchdown underdog on the road going down to Sanford Stadium. We'll see if Georgia gets their first test of the year here. Bama to South Florida, where Alabama's a 32.5-point favorite on the road. Probably has quite a bit of anger built up after last week, so we'll see how that one goes. Western Kentucky goes to Ohio State, where they are a 4-touchdown dog on the road, and then Tulane and Southern Miss with a 12.5-point favorite on the road versus Southern Miss. So where am I leaning this week? And when you look at it a little bit closer, there's some plays and some teams that I do really have interest in this week. I am going to be playing, or let me start it this way. I'm going to be backing off this Florida State-Boston College game a little bit. The weather in Boston this weekend is supposed to be very bad. They have tropical storm warnings for Saturday already in place. They expect a heavy dose of rain, heavy winds as well. So I have no doubt that Florida State's going to blow them out. I just don't know how, and I don't know if they're going to be able to play the game that everyone anticipates, on a neutral field or good weather conditions, mainly from the passing game, right? Keon Coleman, Jordan Travis. I just don't know if that's a safe route for me this week. If I'm looking up top, starting with quarterbacks, DJ Uiagalelei for Oregon State has to be considered. He has had a monster start to the year. They play Oregon State again. I know he's expensive, $9K, and that's something that I am definitely paying a close attention to this week. I don't want to go up too much on the quarterback position because I think there's some guys down lower and in the mid-range that can definitely hold service and get us to where we want to go this week, especially with some more expensive running backs on the slate and receivers. I think one theme that will become pretty clear is there's not a whole lot of amazing pay down options. So what I mean by that, you start running into quite a bit of issues if you look at running backs below 5K, let's say. There's not a lot there. And then receivers below kind of 4K, there's not a lot there. So to keep up with some of these high-powered offenses and games, obviously third week of the season, DK is getting a little bit better with pricing and honing in on guys that are going to make an impact. There's still some blatant mispricing, which we'll talk about. But I think the extreme value guys in that 3K range are just not there this week. So I'm going to try to avoid going up top at quarterback as much as possible. I think the other quarterback that I want to probably slow play, unless I get some news here in the next day or two, is Michael Pratt for Tulane. I love the play. I just don't know if he's healthy. And if he's not going to play or he's not going to see a full workload or whatnot, it's very tough to plug him in because there's the late swap option is very tough this week. He's the last game on the slate. So if you go Pratt, there's not a lot of options to pivot to at that time slot if he, for whatever reason, doesn't suit up in warmups or something like that. As we know in college, we sometimes don't get news until 10, 15 minutes before a game. I'm not going to roll the dice on him this week just for that reason, for game strategy standpoint. So going back to it, if I'm going above 9K, Ugalele is my favorite. Then I like Jaden Daniels quite a bit for LSU. I've already bet LSU this week. I think they hand it to Mississippi State on the road. I don't really know what Mississippi State is doing as a team. They are trying to transition from a high-flying offense, pass, run, and shoot, to more of a balanced run-attack team. That does not play into their strengths here. Against LSU, they're severely outmanned in the front seven on both sides of the ball. I think LSU goes in there and hands it to Mississippi State pretty good. As a 9.5-point road favorite, I think they cover by 2 touchdowns at least. So I like Jaden Daniels quite a bit here at 8,600. Sam Hartman, Notre Dame, I'm just going to keep playing the guy. Doesn't matter who he's playing. They're obviously at home this week versus a poor Central Michigan defense. The guy's 3-4 touchdowns locked in every single week. 8,500. I mean, he only threw like 15 passes, under 20 passes last week and threw 4 touchdowns. The guy's insanely efficient. And I think they can just absolutely handle Central Michigan here. But we've seen Notre Dame will get to 40 points plus before they pull off of the gas, which I like quite a bit. So I think Notre Dame's going to bury him this week. Sam Hartman's going to be in my player pool. Will Howard's probably my favorite play on the slate. The guy, in my opinion, is the closest thing to Max Duggan last year. If you remember that throwing, running ability, he's gone over 30 points in both of his games to start the year. Now he gets Missouri, who is probably going to push him a little bit more. This game should be highly competitive. The line is dropping there. It started at 5.5. I think it's down to 4 now. So I don't think Mizzou's defense is amazing. Like, I think Kansas State's going to score. I think they're just projecting that Mizzou's going to score as well, which is exactly what we want to hear in DFS and fantasy. So Will Howard's probably my favorite quarterback on the slate at 8,200. Going down a little bit, I like Drew Aller quite a bit for Penn State this week as well, 7,900. He's not going to give you the rushing upside, but this kid looks phenomenal to start the year at Penn State. They're a 2-touchdown favorite on the road versus Illinois. If Illinois can keep up and score a little bit here with Penn State, I think we got ourselves a pretty good, we could see an upside game from Aller. This is a guy who's throwing 3 touchdowns a game. He's been highly efficient. They haven't really played anybody great yet. But again, Illinois can kind of keep up their end of the bargain and push this thing with the 52.5 total on it. They're projecting Illinois to score about 3 touchdowns. So if that happens, hopefully we see 30, 40 points plus out of Penn State here, which means Aller's going to be throwing a bit and can get after it. So I like him. Going down, Riley Leonard, I think you just have to consider him every week with his dual threat ability. Look, I get it. They should absolutely hammer Northwestern at home here. But the total being 40.5 is kind of surprising, even though Duke is a 3-touchdown favorite. They have a mixed backfield of running backs and everything else, but Riley Leonard's still the focal point of that offense. And I think he's a guy at 6,700. The price is right that you can consider. Versus, in my opinion, I'm not playing Kyle McCord because the fear of mine is they could do it in a million different ways, right? They have 3 running backs that will all get touches. They could score in defense. They could score in special teams. There's a very good shot that Ohio State wins this game by 3 or 4 touchdowns. They could score 45 points, and Kyle McCord could throw 2 touchdowns. For me, that's too much risk up top in the 9Ks to pay that price for him. But at 6,700, I'll roll the dice on Riley Leonard for sure. And then the other guy that I have serious interest in, he will probably be my highest owned quarterback of the week, is Austin Reed for Western Kentucky. Ohio State has not been really tested yet. And I know Western Kentucky is not necessarily that team that's going to threaten to beat them. Ohio State's obviously better at pretty much every position group on the field. But Western Kentucky runs a high-flying, throw the ball around the field offense. I think Austin Reed is damn good. I think at the very least, they're going to score some points at Ohio State here. The way you beat some of these teams is through the air and challenging their corners and challenging their DBs. As long as their protection can hold up, you're going to see Austin Reed throw the ball 50 times on Saturday. At 5,500, I just think there's too much volume there to ignore. And I think they could score some. So he's got some very cheap, good pay down options to stack with. Like I said, I think Austin Reed's going to be my favorite play of the week, or at least my highest owned play of the week, I should say, at quarterback. It's just too easy and too cheap. The other guy I'm going to throw out there, I'm going bold here. This could blow up in my face. He will not be my highest owned quarterback. So let me just be clear here. I am going to be playing some Spencer Rattler this weekend. Spencer Rattler has not been the problem for South Carolina. You could say it's offensive line, defense, coaching, whatever it is. But Rattler's been freaking good. And I think this is a shot for South Carolina to kind of get themselves back into a conversation. After getting waxed on that primetime game against North Carolina, that was wildly embarrassing. South Carolina knows that they can make some noise here against a Georgia team that is, yes, absolutely loaded to the brim, but they are also a Georgia team that has not been tested whatsoever. I don't know what to expect here. Again, I think this could go multiple ways, right? This game could be 50-3, very possible. I think this game could also be potentially scary for Georgia at home. If they come out sluggish or they come out slow, I don't think they have quite the same skill level position players that they've had in years past. Their front seven on both sides of the ball is insanely dominant. But again, the quarterback's very untested. Receivers, they have multiple guys. Outside of Brock Bowers, you could point to all of them and say kind of like, what have you done? Running backs, do they have a Todd Gurley? Do they have DeAndre Swift? Like, where is the guy, right? So that's what I'm hoping for. I have already bet South Carolina to cover this number at 27.5. I'm going to take some shots at Spencer Rattler. It's going to be a 1% owned play. No one's going to be doing it except this guy. So we'll see. Pray for me. Hopefully it works out. If you decide to go that way, we'll light a candle together and hope for the best. But I do think South Carolina gives Georgia a game early on, and I think they score a little bit, and I think Georgia pulls away and definitely wins this game. But I don't think it's going to be quite as easy as everyone thinks. I hope. If South Carolina's offensive line looks like it did that game against North Carolina, though, this game could be over 7 minutes into the game. So we'll find out. Running backs, let's get to it. Audric Estime, priced up 7,800. Hard not to like him. The problem is just the price point. If you can get there, I like it quite a bit. Jotavius Marks for Mississippi State. If you're going to LSU, he's probably the best option to bring back. I think Mississippi State knows they're going to have to try to run the ball a little bit here. He also is involved in the passing game for them. I don't love the play. There's guys that I like a lot more right below him, but I wanted to mention him. Quick side note, I'm not going to be playing any Ohio State running backs, mainly because there's 3 of them that all get touches. They're all fantastic and phenomenal. It's the same thing with Penn State. I just don't know if there's enough volume between those guys to split a workload and carry me to where I need to go in DFS. Being at this price tag, there's no way I'm going to play a Travion Henderson who could get 6 touches. He could go for 15 touches and 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like, he could break the slate, but I'm not going to go there when I know I have guys like Jaquinlan Jackson for Utah at 6,700, who's probably my favorite play on the slate. Micah Bernard is out for the year for Utah. It's Jackson's backfield, and they should pound this team. Jackson has massive upside and massive floor here. He's my favorite running back on the slate. I'm not going to pay it for guys that I just am hoping get me there. So I'm just going to take the safe card. Jackson's my guy. I also think Trey Benson is a very good play for Florida State at 6,600. especially if that weather is what we think it might be. If you see that weather is going to be rainy and windy, what do you think Florida State's going to do? They're going to rock it on the ground and pound this ball. Trey Benson and even Tafali becomes a very good play for Florida State if that's the case. Damian Martinez for Oregon State. I just hope he gets more than 10 carries because it doesn't even matter. This guy's getting like 9 carries a game, is going for over 100 yards. If San Diego State can push them a little bit and we can see 15 to 20 carries out of Damian Martinez, my God, at 6,400, this is another guy, might be the best running back in the Pac-12. So 6,400, he's going to be making my core lineups and my top teams. The biggest question mark I have on the slate is Jace McClellan for Alabama. At 6,300, he's the lead back for Alabama. You know they're going to come out furious after last week. They are going to destroy South Florida, and they're probably going to do it on the ground. I just don't see it with Jace McClellan. Last year, I thought he looked way more explosive. They got him the ball in space, and he does not look good. And neither does this Alabama offensive line that was highly touted all year. Now, again, they should physically impose their will on South Florida and blow these guys out. They should rush for 300 yards this weekend. I just don't know, is Saban going to give some of these other guys a shot on the ground and say, we're rotating 4 backs here? Someone emerge, someone step up, or are they going to lean on McClellan and just say, let's get him going? I don't know. I'm going to be taking some shots on him, but I don't feel super confident there. 2 other running backs I like, Dakarian Joyner for South Carolina, 5,300. Look, he's been good, and I think they're going to have to find a way to mix him in a little bit to keep this Georgia pass rush honest. If they can run the ball just a hint with Joyner, who's been really good, 5,300 is a pretty good price for him. And Jawar Jordan for Louisville. Another guy who has just been insanely efficient, like Damian Martinez, he's getting less than 10 carries a game, but he's popping off for like 15, 20 DraftKings points because he's popping them in the end zone and he's breaking long runs. If Louisville can get tested and pushed here a little bit by Indiana, I think Jawar Jordan's a pretty good play at running back. Moving to receivers. Look, I really want to get to Marvin Harrison at 9,100. I just don't know if I can. The price tag is so massive. I know he has huge upside, but even again, we've talked about this, 25, 30 points, does that pay off his price tag? You know, he's so much more expensive than anybody on the slate. He has to go for over 30. And there's so many mouths to feed for Ohio State. Yeah, you're going to see 30, 40-point games out of him, but you're going to see like 10-point games out of him just because they don't need him that day. This could be one of those, and that's my fear. But obviously, I'll never talk you off from playing Marvin Harrison Jr. Malik Neighbors for LSU is a good play, but I like Brandon Thomas a little bit more for $300 less. Keon Coleman, great play, but we'll talk about the weather. If that weather is bad up in Boston on Saturday, I'm going to be leaning off of this play. I would pivot to Keandre Lambert-Smith for Penn State. We talked about Aller looking fantastic. Lambert-Smith is by far his top receiver in Penn State or at Penn State. So he is a top play for me this week if I'm going there. I think Jaquan Johnson for Tulane is a really good play no matter the quarterback, but especially gets a bump if Michael Pratt is going to be in the lineup. Jaden Thomas for Notre Dame seems to be the most reliable for them right now, but Notre Dame is tough because Hartman just spreads the ball out to everyone. So I don't think you necessarily have to stack Hartman here, but Jaden Thomas is probably the guy I would lean to if you're going to. Silas Bolden for Oregon State, 6K. He's had a fantastic start to the year. Lawrence Keys, the other guy for Tulane, who's a really good player, 6K. So he's a discount a little bit off of Jackson. If you can't quite get there, both guys are fine. Mizzou, Luther Burden, 5,900, former 5-star recruit. I actually read something this week that was pretty interesting saying with NIL and transfer portal now, they got to start feeding this guy the ball or he's just going to transfer. He's just going to go to Georgia or, wherever. So keep an eye on this one. I could see in a big matchup at home, they force feeding Burden the ball here early. I like him quite a bit this week. Phillip Brooks for Kansas State is a guy you can consider if you're going to stack up Will Howard. Leandrick Griffin from Mississippi State at 5,700 has been kind of the main guy down there, but we talked about it. Mississippi State doesn't want to throw the ball. So I don't love it, but he's there. DK for Wisconsin, 5,500. We didn't really touch on the Wisconsin game, guys. I don't really know what to do here. They have looked terrible to start the year. They get Georgia Southern at home, 20-point favorite. Everyone's going to be talking about playing Tanner Mordecai and all that. I don't know. They've got two really good running backs. Mordecai could have like a good game, but I'm not expecting him to blow the doors off. He's just not look comfortable in this offense. But if you want to pick some pieces off of a team that's a big home favorite, I definitely don't hate that at all. Duke, Jalen Calhoun at 5,400 is an option for sure if you're going to be playing Riley Leonard. Jamari Thrash, Louisville. He's probably one of my favorite receivers on the board this week at 5,300. He is by far the clear-cut number one receiver for Louisville. Love him in that offense. Xavier Leggett, South Carolina. If you're feeling frisky and want to get on that South Carolina play with me, that's who I'm pairing Spencer Rattler up with. You've got Jordan Moore for Duke as well. Harrison Wallace for Penn State you can consider. But then here we get to two guys who are probably my favorite plays on the board. They are going to be extremely popular, as I've seen everyone talking about them this week. Just a clear-cut mispricing for DraftKings. Brock Bowers at 4,700 for Georgia. They haven't even needed him this year, so I think they're kind of doing him a favor. Like, this kid's going to be potentially a top 10 draft pick and has been for 2 years. Let's not get this guy hurt and banged up before we enter competitive games. I think you're going to see him early. If this game stays competitive, I think you're going to see him often. So at 4,700, yeah, I mean, if they blow South Carolina out, you're going to see the same thing. You're going to see Brock Bowers just not really contribute, get 3 points, 5 points for you for sure. But if South Carolina can keep this thing somewhat competitive, watch out for Brock Bowers at 4,700. And then Malachi Corley. He's the alpha number one receiver for Western Kentucky. He missed last week with an injury, but he is all systems go here at 4,700. If you're, again, riding with me for Austin Reed in Western Kentucky to take on Ohio State, this is the guy that you want. He is by far, again, their clear-cut number one. You could also go to Easton Messer for Western Kentucky at 4,600. He's probably the number two, being that they're banged up a little bit in the receiving core. Omar Cooper is a guy to keep an eye on. He's a redshirt freshman for Indiana. If Cam Camper is out this weekend, he becomes almost a lock play at 4K for me. If Cam Camper is in, I'm going to be mixing in Camper and Cooper as well. So keep an eye on that situation. But Omar Cooper is a guy that's flashed, and I talked about him. I could see him working his way into the offense quite a bit more, and he will not be 4K for very long. And the last guy I'm going to talk about is Jaden Greathouse from Notre Dame. 4K. I think he's in a pretty good spot. Again, you're hoping at 4K he can pop, 40, 50 yards and a touchdown, and you're in a pretty good spot there. So that's all I got. That's the DraftKings main slate here for this Saturday in the morning. Good luck, everybody. Again, subscribe, hit that thumbs up, and follow me on X, Twitter. Good luck this weekend.